We're going to have two sessions now. The first one is going to be by the Uganda Communications Commission. Let me invite George Nyombi Thembo to please come up on stage. George is the Executive Director of the Uganda Communications Commission. He comes to us all the way from Uganda, and he's going to share with us what are some things happening with Uganda in terms of their national digital strategies. After that, we're going to hear from another speaker whose organization has been mentioned many times today. UCSAF, we're going to hear from Albert Richard, Head of Operations, Universal Communication Service Access Fund. So these are the next two speakers before our last final closing session. So first, I'm going to now welcome George William Thembo, Executive Director of UCC, to present some remarks, some observations, and tips from the experience in Uganda. A big round of applause, please, for the Executive Director of Uganda Communications Commission, George William Thembo. George, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. We're excited as UCC and on behalf of the Ugandan government to be here to share this amazing observation and the conversation on what is taking place in the ICT space, more so in our countries, more so in Africa. Obviously, I know that I'm standing between now and the closure of the conference, so I'll be very cautious not to burn a lot of time. I'll try as much as I can to summarize what I should say. First, in Uganda, the ICT system or sector is growing at more than 15% per year, contributing close to 3.5 of our GDP, of course, becoming the major contributor to the treasury in terms of taxes, with close to 42 million people now connected, with active SIM cards, about 38 million. Mobile money is a big thing which is happening, bringing on board the unbanked populations into the banking system. Actual Airtel money and MTN money are soon becoming the biggest banks, if you may, in our country. In the regulatory framework, they have even been asked to separate mobile money services to become separate financial services to be regulated by the central bank. They have gone away from our umbrella of regulation. The government is really promoting and incentivizing more investment in this sector, because we know that this is a sector, this is a service that has reached the majority of our people. Some of you grew up during my time, some of us who are digital immigrants, those are in their late 50s, you remember water for all by the year 2000 as a buzzword. Water for all, education for all. But I don't think we even achieved the 30% for all, percentage for all by the year 2000. Why? And this was not a crisis, because water for all, those who could not get clean water, they had a substitute. You could get dirty water. I grew up in the village. We could get our dirty water, we would boil it, and we grew up bouncing babies. You can see I'm 60, but I look like a 40-year-old. I took dirty water, but I could boil it. There was a substitute. Health for all. If you couldn't go to the hospital, you had your sangoma somewhere, a witch doctor who could make some concoctions and some of the ailments would be healed. But with the digital connectivity, there's no substitutes. You must either be connected or you are not connected. And if you are not connected, that one is going to bring in a very big imbalance. We shall develop these two worlds, the world of the unconnected and the world of the connected. So this time round, I think all of us in government as regulators, we are ensuring that communication for all, connectivity for all, broadband for all should not only be a buzzword, It should be something that we must see happening. How will it happen? Collaboration between the government and the private sector is very, very important. I believe in the private sector, although I'm a regulator, but I believe in the private sector because I know this is more even relevant in the communication sector. Since the invention of the telephone in the late 19th century, colonial governments in Africa tried to connect people. In my country, only 2% were connected by the year 2002. Only 2% had a telephone in their house. For the past 25 years, the smart collaboration between the governments and the private sector has seen penetration of connectivity, penetration of internet, in some cases in Africa exceeding 70% now. In Uganda, internet penetration is now clocking around 55%, connecting 30 million people. This has never happened. Everywhere, from Somaliland, South Africa to Nigeria, we see our people being connected. Who is doing this? The private sector. Who is facilitating this? The government. That collaboration should continue and should become more smarter even. Because the temptations now, because whenever I hear the conversation around affordability, we have to be very cautious about the issue of affordability. Affordability should not be one-sided. As much as our people should be able to afford the services, the private sector, the operators, should afford to roll out these products. How can they afford to do this? Their operation should be profitable. We should not be tempted to take away the money from the private operators in the name of doing whatever we should do, de-franchising their capacity to roll out networks. There should be a balance between affordability to the population and affordability of the operators to deliver services. That's a critical thing we must think about. Yesterday, when I was listening in here, when we talk of taxing the operators, taxing the private sector, yes, the government will already tax you. Actually, the private sector, you shouldn't ask for things that can't be done for you. We shouldn't talk of elimination of taxes. We can talk of reduction of what? Reduction of taxes, not elimination. Because governments, the way they work, I'm lucky that before I became a regulator, I was in government for quite some time as a minister, and more so a minister of ICT for 5 years and a minister for 14 years in government. I know how government thinks. Government taxes growth sectors. If this sector is growing at 15%, it won't avoid taxes. They will tax it. And that's the right thing to do in order to get macroeconomic stability. So what we should be asking for is reduction of taxes, avoiding of compiling more taxes on the operators, stifling the profitability of operators. Because when you stifle their profitability, they will not be able to innovate, they won't be able to roll out the services. So that's another critical thing, especially my colleagues who are legislators in this room, my colleagues who are in the government in this room, we must know this delicate balance. Affordability shouldn't be one-sided, should be two-sided. Affordability of our consumers is very, very important. It makes a lot of political sense, it makes a lot of regulatory sense, it makes a lot of business sense. But of course, the most critical is the profitability of the operators. They must be profitable because capital goes where profits are high. And through capital, where we shall get investment, it's through investment that we shall get out innovations, that we shall get out rollout of these networks to reach the majority of our people. In Uganda, we also have UCSAF, the Universal Service Fund. This is the last observation I'll make. For us, we have learned that connectivity, much as it is critical, it may not be a very critical problem of the future. The most critical problem is going to be the usage. Today, all of us, I think you realize that the more we connect the people, the more the usage gap widens. What does that mean? There are more people connected, but lesser and less people using the capacity. Am I understood? Am I clear on this? So usage is very, very important. So we also have to be very careful balancing connectivity, especially the universal access funds. Looking at connectivity alone may not solve the problem of serving the underserved. We have to look at the whole ecosystem, a wholesome approach. Connectivity, but most importantly, what about content? What are we doing about content? What are we doing about digital literacy? What are we doing about last-inch connectivity, if you may, or devices? So the universal access funds, we have also to look into this. As we roll out connectivity, we must also now look at issues of digital literacy, from basic digital literacy to the medium digital literacy. We have to look at issues pertaining to content. Content drives affordability. Content drives innovation. Content drives usage. Governments are sitting on mounds of data which are not released to innovators. As government, as regulators, because to me, regulators, we are moving more from the role of being enforcers to becoming facilitators and one of advocacy are the two major roles, to facilitate and to advocate for the operators, moving from the enforcer. Of course, we shall remain with enforcement. That is God-given. We are always the policemen of the sector. But much of that is important to us. We must also rethink the way we must facilitate the operators, and at the same time, also rethink the way we should advocate for these, for the operators. So a balance between connectivity and usage is also very, very critical. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thembo, for your fantastic remarks. I think the audience greatly appreciates your insights and your experience, and I think even those who are 40 years old are jealous of your passion and your energy. So thank you so much. Thank you.